Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Four Eyes of Oppression in Professionalism. On behalf of the HER DU Committee, I want to thank you all for being here today and spending some time with us and taking part in the 26th Annual HER DU Conference. I am Rufina Hernandez. I'm the Associate Director of the Office of Equal Opportunity and the ADA coordinator for the university, and I serve on the planning committee for HER DU. And I am very honored to be here with you today. I don't know if you were able to participate in the keynote presentation this afternoon with Mia Birdsong, but that was extremely powerful and would have loved to have spent the entire afternoon with her. But we also have some wonderful presentations with this afternoon's session, and I want to introduce our conference volunteers, who are Morgan Welty and also Elliot Trucks. I think Elliot is on there. And videos are AV team member Weston Docker. So we want to thank you, Weston, for all your assistance this afternoon. We will all be on this Zoom session and available to help you if anything should come up relating to tech or general questions about the conference or whatever else may be on your mind. We're here to help facilitate the session for the presenters, so feel free to put any kinds of questions into the chat. Speaking of questions, for any questions that we do receive, we're going to ask you to use the strategy called progressive stacking, a technique intended to give marginalized voices a chance to speak, particularly in an environment where there is a dominant group present. Which means that if you choose to self-identify as belonging to a marginalized racial or ethnic group, and you'd like to ask a question or make a comment in the chat, you can choose to include an asterisk at the start of your question, and the chat moderators who are compiling questions will prioritize those with the asterisks. You aren't required to self-identify, as it is an option, and we will do our best to get to all the questions as they come. The presenters have asked that the questions will be responded to at the very end if they haven't already been answered during the course of the session. Now, let me introduce to you our presenters today. We have Meghan Montelibano and Molly Smith, who are presenters. And take it away, ladies.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Meghan and I are thrilled to be able to spend the afternoon with you, and we're just so excited to be a part of the HER DU conference. So we appreciate you being here. I'm Molly Smith. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an MS marketing student in the Daniels College of Business. And my background is in writing, communication, marketing, and anti-oppression. I'll turn it over to Meghan.
Thanks, Malls. Hello, everyone. My name is Meghan Montelibano-Gorman. We are so honored to share this virtual space with y'all. My cat Leela is joining us today as well. Molly and I had a lot of fun putting this workshop together. I hope it is a productive, useful use of your time. And like I said, we are just so grateful for you that you have chose to spend your afternoon with us. My pronouns are she, her. I am a full-time staff member here at the University of Denver. I work in the Office of Advancement for Alumni Engagement, and I just started the EDD program in higher education at Morgridge College of Ed.
So we want to take a moment just to say that you don't have to feel pressured to turn your camera on if you don't feel like it, or if you feel like showing us your face, you're welcome to turn your camera on. We want to create space for everyone to have a voice or be present in whatever capacity that works for them. So you're welcome to unmute yourself, use the chat, camera on, camera off, whatever. The title of our presentation is The 4 Eyes of Oppression in Professionalism, Women in the Workforce. And the reason why we have included the X in women, first of all, it's pretty widely debated, and there's been some growing discourse about whether the X is a sign of inclusion or not. But the question is, why not say women, trans women, and non-binary people? There's not necessarily a right answer, but here's why we're using the X today. So first of all, trans women are women. So the X in women to me acknowledges that each person has a unique relationship with their gender assigned at birth, which contributes to their intersections of privilege and oppression. And we can acknowledge that without classifying trans women as a different class of woman. We're all women. And the dominant norm of woman is the idea usually of a white, cis, hetero, feminine woman. So to me, the X recognizes the intersection of our identities as women and rejects this norm of the only way to be a woman. Another piece is that it removes men from women. And we're going to be focusing on our personal experiences as women, but we want to invite and encourage conversation, space, and nuance for our non-binary participants and friends here as well. Here's what you can expect from us today. So first, Meghan will be doing a land acknowledgement. We'll go over our introductions and community agreements. We'll share our positionality, where we're coming from, what our context is. We'll question what is professionalism. We'll define the 4 eyes of oppression by watching a short video. We'll do some storytelling. Meghan and I are going to present case studies focusing on some of the problematic markers of professionalism as they impact us on the level of mind, body, and spirit. Then we're going to have time for reflection and discussion and a group activity that I think is going to be really fun. And then we'll wrap up and give you some steps. We'll encourage you to give you some steps to take action and move forward so that this doesn't occur in a vacuum. Now I'll turn it over to Meghan for our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Molly. So we would like to start this workshop with a formal acknowledgement of the lands on which we convene. The University of Denver resides on land held in stewardship by the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. We recognize the descendant communities of the Northern Cheyenne tribe of Montana, the Northern Arapaho tribe of Wyoming, and the Southern Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma, who were forcibly removed from this land. We also acknowledge the Southern Ute tribe and the Ute Mountain Ute tribe, which are the only 2 federally recognized tribes in Colorado. Today, Denver is home to many different citizens of Indigenous nations, and we recognize their enduring presence on this land by paying respects to their elders, both past and present. Please take a moment to consider legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and resettlement that bring us together today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at all public events. It is because of the sacrifices and hardships of the traditional Indigenous inhabitants of this land that we are able to be here to learn, collaborate, and share knowledge.
Great, thank you so much, Meghan. We would love to get to know all of you. We're glad you're here. So please, if you'd like, we invite you to share in the chat your name, where you're at. If you want to share with us your company, your title, what you do at your job, that'd be awesome. And also your DU affiliation, whether you're a staff member, student, faculty, friend of DU, everyone's welcome here.
And while we see the chat filling in, we also wanted to just articulate some community agreements for this space. Molly and I have had outlined 3. The first is we prioritize impact over intent in this space. We encourage everyone to use I statements instead of you statements. In dialogue, there's a practice referred to as move forward, move back. So if you are, not nervous to share, or if you were the first one to share, maybe just take a moment and a step back to make space for others who may not be so quick. And if you are hesitant or nervous, we encourage you to step forward, to move forward. And we want everyone to feel that they are represented and they have a voice in this conversation. All, of course, within your comfort and what you are willing and consent to share with us. And if there's anything else you would like us to use as community guidelines, please share that. You can private message Molly or myself, and we'll be sure to implement that.
I love seeing the chat fill up. It looks like we have folks from all over DU, people representing different regions. It's awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. Another disclaimer that we want to offer as we go into this presentation is that Meghan and I, you might notice that we blend some of our more casual language with our more academic language. You might have heard of this idea of code switching. So code switching is if you think about like the different ways that you communicate or the different norms that you adhere to in different settings, they're kind of like these different codes. I interact in a totally different way with my family than I do with my classmates because of the different expectations of communication. And there's another way to consider code switching, and that's through code meshing. So we are giving this presentation, we're hosting this opportunity for conversation about professionalism and kind of pushing back on that. So we will you'll notice us blending these codes together because Megan's one of my best buds. So we talk to each other in the way that we talk to each other. We're all friends here, but at the same time, also we're going to be talking about kind of some academic and professional concepts. So, so with that said, we are really, Meghan and I, we're really open with each other. We're pretty cash. We swear, we tell the truth. So if you have sensitive ears and that is maybe not what your expectations were, just want to set that expectation, and whatever you decide to do with that, we just invite you to experience something maybe a little different.
So Molly and I think it's important that for us to build community really quickly in this space, we wanted to sort of state our positionalities and where we're coming from in this space. So I will read my statement. My name is Meghan. Like I said, I am a first-generation Filipino American. I grew up in LA, Los Angeles, and I never felt minoritized until I left and occupied predominantly white and wealthy spaces via higher education and my professional career, which has afforded me immense privilege as well. My pedagogy and my practice is rooted in critical race theory and social justice. I am an impatient leader, an unlearner, and I believe in scholarship as a form of resistance. And I'll let Molly read her statement.
Great. So I am a white woman from an upper class upbringing in Colorado. I have a formal education in anti-oppression from a private liberal arts institution, which is an opportunity that I gained as a result of several axes of privilege. And my conceptual framework draws from radical feminism, critical race theory, and post-colonialism. I live with non-visible disabilities, which impact my daily life and work. We want to acknowledge our power, privilege, and positionality. We are both femme-presenting cis women, and together our lived experiences, perspectives, and epistemologies inform our work and leverage our combined backgrounds in marketing, communication, and anti-oppression.
Great. So we wanted to do a little word association as we jump into the more tactical parts of this. So I just dropped a link in the chat, and we're hoping that you all could share with us, how do you define professionalism via a word cloud? So I will present my screen so we can see those things coming in, and let us know if you have any issues with the word cloud submitting those answers. Oppressive, outdated, proper. These are great. And we'll come back to this, but we just wanted to kind of start us off and prime us with, how do we understand professionalism? So as this word cloud is building, and of course my PowerPoint is frozen. Whiteness, okay, surface level appearance. Oh, interesting. We'll give just a little more time for this. I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you. Let me just pull up my notes quickly. All right, thank you all for engaging in that. So when we look at the literal definition of professionalism, it is defined as the competence or skill expected of a professional. It is the conduct, behavior, and attitude of someone in a business environment. So professionalism has really become coded language for white favoritism in the workplace practices that more often than not privilege the values of white and Western employees and leave behind people of color. But it is also harmful to white folks, so we want to specify that as well. These standards are related to speech, dress code, work style, timeliness, work culture, and these are established over time. So work culture is believed to be unbiased, objective, and sterile. Going back to the definition, we find that there is a lot of opportunity for subjectivity, like who defines what competence is and who is the expecting party from this statement. Professionalism has been defined by white and Western dominant beliefs, and this has been used to underpin a narrative of white supremacy that shows up in hiring, firing, promotions, penalties, interpersonal interactions, both between colleagues and supervisors. And I personally wasn't aware of the toxic traits of professionalism until much later in my career. And some of you, this may be a new concept as well. And I would say that is the point of white dominant culture. It is so ingrained in the consciousness of society that we don't even realize it. So our purpose today is to really challenge those notions of traditional professionalism and reshape that narrative so that it honors and celebrates our best damn selves in the workplace.
All right, thanks, Megan. So I am going to show you a video about the 4 I's of oppression. That's going to be our framework for looking through the rest of this presentation. And we're going to be really looking today at hegemonic professionalism. And what we mean by hegemonic is the norm, like what Megan was talking about, that that white, powerful, dominant culture and professionalism held up through that lens. So hegemony, or anything that's hegemonic, is usually bullshit and is used by people with privilege to oppress other people. So we want to make clear that professionalism itself isn't inherently bad. It's the limited definition of professionalism that's used to keep a dominant group in power that is where we start to ask questions. So with that said, we're going to be looking at hegemonic professionalism through the 4 I's of oppression. And I will share this video. It's pretty cute. There are Legos. And I'll share my sound. There we go.
It's a word that's often used as a blanket term, but there's actually a whole lot more to it. There are 4 interlocking aspects of oppression: ideological, institutional, interpersonal, and internalized. And it might seem like a small difference, but it's very important to be able to distinguish between each kind, because understanding oppression is the first step to fighting it. Let's start with the core at the heart of every form of oppression: ideology. Every system of oppression comes from the idea that one group is somehow better than another. Ideological oppression starts when the dominant group associates positive qualities with itself and negative qualities with the marginalized or othered group. Ideological oppression describes the deeply ingrained social root of inequality. It's the larger overarching idea that leads to the isms. For example, the idea that black people are dangerous is ideological racism. The idea that poor people are lazy is ideological classism. Ideological oppression Institutional oppression is the way that systems and institutions manifest the dominant ideology. Institutions control access, who is able to get to what and how. This includes legal rights, police practice, access to medical care and education, public policy, political power, and media representation. For example, when women make 2/3 of what men make, that's institutional sexism. When a building is constructed without wheelchair ramps, that's institutional ableism. All of this leads to interpersonal oppression. Interpersonal oppression is probably the easiest to recognize because it happens all around us. Interpersonal oppression is the way that people play out discrimination and violence on each other. It can take the form of microaggressions, jokes, stereotypes, and harassment. For example, when a student is bullied for being gay, it's interpersonal homophobia. When a Muslim person is told that they're a terrorist, it's interpersonal Islamophobia. And all those forces, ideological, institutional, and interpersonal, lead to internalized oppression. Internalized oppression is the way that people with marginalized identities internalize narratives of their own inferiority. It's what leads people to feel less than. This is the end goal of oppression. The oppressive party doesn't need to exert force any longer because the marginalized group is enacting oppression on itself to maintain the status quo. It's important to remember that it's never a marginalized person's fault that they feel internalized oppression. It's simply what happens when someone faces negative stereotypes, low expectations, and ongoing discrimination. So, for example, an immigrant feeling embarrassed about having an accent is internalized xenophobia. When a trans woman feels that they can never be a real woman, that's internalized transphobia. So, to review, the 4 I's of oppression are ideological, institutional, interpersonal, and internalized. Each of these types are interconnected and completely supported by the others. They can never exist on their own and can even be seen as a cycle. Now that you understand the different kinds of oppression, you're even more equipped to fight it. Don't forget that any effort to dismantle oppression should aim to address it at all 4 of these levels. Thanks for watching.
Okay, great. So the next thing that we're going to do is Meghan and I are each going to do a little bit of storytelling. We're going to share about our experience through case studies. The theme of the Her DU conference is centered on mind, body, and spirit. So through each of those different frameworks, we're going to tell some of our stories about our experiences, and then we're going to look at how they show up on all 4 of those I's. And after each of our case studies, we're going to provide some time for quiet journaling and reflection. So whatever that looks like for you, if you want to have a pad and paper, record voice notes, or type notes on your device, whatever works. And as long as you are able to reference it later for further reflection if you'd like. So I am going to start by sharing a case study on the mind. So my experience is that I have ADHD and mental illness, which means that my mind or my brain works differently from most people. And these conditions make it harder for me to fit some professional norms. Some of you may have heard some of these messages before, but for me, they kind of hit different. Arrive in a professional and timely manner, be efficient, grind, hustle, get it done, wait your turn to speak, and don't be emotional or dramatic at work. there's a person named Asa Gray who wrote an article for the Stanford Social Innovation Review, and it's amazing. We'll send it to you after this presentation. I am almost sure that we have access to email you after this, but if we don't, look it up, find it, it's awesome. She says that the sense of urgency in our capitalist, there is a sense of urgency in our capitalist economy, and therefore our professional environments can make it difficult for us to take time to be inclusive and thoughtful. And in a world driven by capitalism, professionalism is based on monochronic relationship to timeliness and work style. It centers on productivity over people, values time commitments, and accomplishes tasks in a linear fashion. There are a few different ways that my ADHD symptoms get in the way. I see a question from Heather about the title of the article. Thank you for your question. I need to look it up briefly after this, but I'll post it in the chat and I'll post a link as well. So thank you. So you're welcome. There's this concept that a lot of neurodiverse people experience, and it's called time blindness. So it's similar to color blindness, where people who are colorblind perceive colors differently than people who are not colorblind. I can't track time the way that my colleagues do. My perception of time is really different. And oftentimes that's why I might not know how long I've been talking, or I won't know how long it's going to take me to complete a task, or I might be 5 minutes late consistently. I also am highly distractible. I struggle with self-monitoring and impulsivity. And there's definitely intersections of gender and race here too, because blurting out in a meeting or saying something that might be out of turn has specific consequences as a woman, but also I'm a white woman, so I don't experience the same penalties or discrimination that that a woman of color might, for instance. And also the message of leaving your emotions and personal life at home is also gendered. The don't cry at work concept, don't take personal phone calls concept, women are dramatic concept. And this also makes it kind of complicated for me because of the idea of disclosure. It's challenging to give people context and ask for what I need when it's not appropriate to talk about my personal life or the state of my mind when I'm at work. But also, at the same time, I want to have this agency to not want people to know about my disability because I don't want them to think differently of me. So here's how it shows up in the 4 I's of oppression. So first, there's the belief or the value that people who aren't efficient are lazy, and the value that we place on timeliness and efficiency, that's ideological. Then there's the institutional role of company goals, structures, rules, and policies. There's probably many of us who have had jobs where if you're late, you're fired, or there's a 3 strikes, you're out type of rule. There's interpersonal tensions that might arise with coworkers because of these expectations of deadlines and strict notions of time. And then there's the internalized belief that I experience sometimes that I'm unintelligent, I'm incompetent, I'm over emotional because of these things. And that, like the video explained, makes it a lot easier for those in power to keep me down, because I will be just in this cycle of fear and rushing, trying to get things done, when really, if those in power were to acknowledge their power and try to create a more equitable space, I might be able to do my job at a level that really speaks to my skills and my intelligence. So we're going to leave a couple of minutes now for some journaling. Meghan has posted a couple of questions in the chat. So first, did this example resonate with your experience of privilege and oppression? Is it different from your experience, and in what ways? And then what questions does this bring up for you and for your work environment? So we'll give a couple of minutes for reflection.
Okay, so hopefully that was, it's definitely not enough time, but enough to put some thoughts down and process Molly's story. Thank you for sharing that, Molly. The next case study we'll be covering is about body, and Molly and I are going to be sharing this story. So I will let her start us off.
Great, so there are very specific expectations of how to position our bodies in the workplace, like the space that we take up, our physical expressions of gender, and what we wear. So Meghan and I share a few privileges. We're both STEM presenting, so it's not so challenging for us to adhere to gendered norms for business formal or business casual dress codes. We both are pretty small in stature too, so we feel comfortable not taking up too much space as women. But there is definitely a gendered thing when it comes to professional body language, like standing firm and like being open, eye contact. That definitely has some ableist stuff going on too. But sorry, I'm getting a little bit distracted. And we both also have non-disabled bodies. So buildings, tools, etc., are usually designed for bodies like ours. And for me personally, I come from economic privilege. And when I started my first job out of college, my first full-time job, I was working at a nonprofit and making a relatively small salary. But I felt as though I still had to adhere to this professional dress code, right? I had to use something on my body to show the world, to communicate to the world, like, I am a professional, take me seriously. So my mom got me a Michael Kors bag and I was ready to go. Like once I had a marker of wealth and privilege and status, then I was ready to take on the world, ready to do my work.
And similar to Molly, those same messages of how I needed to look were, I was conditioned to think those things as well. So my first job, I worked as an admission counselor in higher ed, and I'm front facing. I had to be in front of parents. I had to uphold this image of the institution I was working for. And I didn't have the economic privilege or access to those types of, that type of wardrobe. So I was out here at like Ross, Dress for Less, and Value Village, thrifting. And don't get me wrong, we still love a bargain, but I was trying to make myself fit into what I thought, or what I had been told is how I should look, how I should be presenting myself. And how it relates back into the 4 I's. So wealth is clearly an ideological value in our culture, and this belief that upper class people are better than working class people. I grew up in an immigrant family. My parents, we were comfortable, but there was struggle, and that was just taught to us. That was the American dream, right? Like having those markers, like Molly mentioned, of wealth was something ingrained in me, at least as a young child.
Yeah, totally. There's also the institutional role of dress code policies, of looking nice, looking professional. Usually means, when we say nice, that's definitely from my perspective, it's a coded word. Then there's the interpersonal benefits of the ways that others treat someone who has markers of wealth, or who's adhering to gender norms when it comes to business attire. And then there's the internalized belief of superiority or inferiority because of wealth status. That makes us feel like we either belong to an in-group or we're part of the out-group. The belief, the internalized belief, like I am professional because I dress professionally or I dress nice.
And even as we give this presentation and we're talking about the 4 I's, I have 100% internalized these notions, right? Like thinking about my days from Value Village, and now I have, you know, my Louis Vuitton Neverfull, like best believe I was hyped about that. And I recognize the, I guess, hypocrisy in that, but all of those I's are at play. Like people treat me differently because I have a different type of wardrobe now. People view me in a different way, and I myself know what's happening. And I think a lot of times, especially for women of color, that's a coping and survival mechanism. And I still love my purse, but there's so much more to just a purse is I guess what we're trying to get across. So we'll go back to some journaling again, and I can repost the questions in the chat, but we'll reread the questions from this story about our case study on bodies. Did this example resonate with your experience of privilege or oppression? Is it different from your experience, and in what ways? And what questions does this bring up for you and for your work environment? So we'll give y'all about 1 minute. Alrighty, so we will move on to our last case study, and I will be talking about spirit. So I'm sure many of us in this virtual Zoom room has been told and taught that the customer is always right. And there are a lot of communication aspects of my job. So this is something that I experience pretty much on a day-to-day basis, and hopefully you all can pick up similar experiences in your own life. So that notion of the customer is always right, that's a classic marker of toxic professionalism. We refer to it as paternalism, which is really just decision-making is clear for those who are in power and is unclear to those without it. So me, a little coordinator, have no power, have no authority to make any kind of decision or policy. I am bound by the rules that my leadership create. So customer is right, that's what I must do. So like I said, a lot of my job deals with frontline communications, and a lot of times these interactions are benign, like giving user identification information, but sometimes it's really difficult from being physically threatened or called a racial slur. One time I got a call from a man who told me, quote, "I'm going to come down there and teach you a lesson, you bitch." Some of you in this room know me, some of you do not, but I am a feisty, Filipina, powerful, emotional woman. But at work, it's unprofessional for me to stay true to my values, to have my integrity and speak up for myself because of those policies that are in place at work, where the only thing I wanted to do was to tell this man to go fuck himself, but that was clearly not going to be a possibility. The only thing this man knew about me was my gender, and he used that as an attack, which I think there's a lot to unpack there. And when I think about the historical violence against AAPI women, that holds a little more weight for me. So back to the 4 I's, customer service is clearly an ideological value in the professional world. And there are policies established by all institutions that mandate that we are always required to appease the client, right? In this situation, the interpersonal oppression I faced when I sought help from leadership was pretty much useless. And so I internalized this belief that this is just part of my job, right? Like, this is just it. And there are pieces of racial battle fatigue, and I'll even say gender battle fatigue. I don't even know if that's a real term, but just having to explain myself every time this type of situation happens, I just don't have the time or energy or emotional capacity to to address that. And I'll probably cry, which is also not allowed at work. So after having those messages continually, my spirit is kind of continually crushed. So again, back to the journal questions that are still in the chat, we do invite you to just reflect on all the stories, and we'll give a little bit more time in case you wanted to go back to any of the other parts, the other case studies, and we'll reconnect in a few minutes.
So we're going to move into the next part of our workshop, which is a little bit more interactive. We're going to ask you to take a few minutes to reflect on these questions that we have up on the PowerPoint, and I'll read them aloud. We'll also post them in the chat. To take a couple minutes and journal your thoughts. And then we're going to go into breakout rooms where you can discuss your responses to these questions and any other reflections that you've had so far. And if you need closed captions for this discussion, please let us know, and we can utilize the main Zoom room as one of the breakout rooms. So the questions are, when and how did you learn what to wear to work? When and how did you learn when it's appropriate or inappropriate to speak in a meeting? How have you seen oppressive standards of professionalism play out in your workplace? How have you contributed? Thinking about the 4 I's: ideological, institutional, interpersonal, and internalized. And then question 4, is there anything from the word cloud activity or the case studies that you'd like to discuss with your group? So we'll offer a few minutes for your journaling, and then we'll put you into breakout rooms.
All right, so hopefully that gave you some time to gather your thoughts, and in the breakout rooms, hopefully will be an opportunity for you to share anything you feel comfortable to do so. We posted the questions in the chat, which should carry over to your breakout room. And then we also posted the image of the word cloud that you all contributed to earlier in the session. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We'll wait for hopefully more people come back. Sometimes when I teach and I put people in breakout rooms, they don't come back. So I'm always a little anxious in this time. And Martha, it's good to see you. And yes, longer breakout sessions. We could do like a whole series on this probably. All right, everyone, welcome back. Hopefully we got to build some community in those breakout rooms. I'm loving seeing some of your faces. It's so lovely. Looks like Kyle's cat made an appearance. Is it Parker? Is that the name of your cat, Kyle?
Palmer.
Palmer, I'm sorry.
Very close.
Okay, Molly, can you see if folks are still in breakouts, or is everyone back here?
Let me see.
I believe they've all closed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think everyone's back.
Wonderful. All righty, so we were hoping that breakout room was a good space for you to kind of process and chat through some of the stories we shared and reflect upon your own experience. And if anyone is comfortable, we would love to hear from your breakout sessions without sharing identifying personal details that are not yours. What were some of the highlights from your group discussion?
Well, one symbol of oppressive fashion, shall we say, that women have to endure are heels. And the fact that those shoes are not geared towards comfort, they are geared towards possibly just torture. But the fact that we're now able at this time in this time frame to be able to use a variety of types of shoes. Yes, right. That's exactly right. That's what they were geared towards. And women suffered greatly because of that notion that we had to use heels And I don't know about the higher the better, but certainly in some instances, you know, they conveyed professionalism in certain industries. And so that I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, absolutely, Rufina. And Emily shared a fun fact that high heels were originally a men's fashion. I wonder if they started wearing them and they're like, this ain't for us.
I'd like to know at what point in time, because I don't ever see anything in our history books that show heels. Although in the French, there is a time frame where the men were wearing heels, but they weren't that high. They weren't as high as some of our heels are today.
It looks like Alia said Louis XIV was the one who maybe made that in fashion. Thank you for sharing, Rufina. Anyone else would like to share anything from your breakout session?
We talked just a little bit about how women are sexualized even in a workplace. And Meghan, we've worked in the same position. So yeah, just having kind of random phone calls and even over the phone, I've experienced that. And we just talked about, you know, kind of what you talked about in your case study, how we have an image to uphold and customer's always right. And, you know, how do you handle that situation?
Yeah, it boggles my mind because even when they can't see you, it still happens. Like Morgan, I don't know if you were working, but when we were on the floor together, we all answered phones together and someone called me a hot tamale. All of my female colleagues jumped on it and were like, absolutely not. And, you know, those situations are so unfortunate. And that situation particularly for me was so formational just because of the community and support I had from my team. I hate the fact that we have to do that for one another, but I'm grateful that I did have that with my colleagues at the time. And even now in COVID, like when you're wearing a mask, like you can't see anything. Like what are you trying to get at here? So it's definitely a thing. Thank you for sharing, Morgan.
Something else that we talked about was more along the lines of what impact will COVID have on the required standard dress as people come back to the university, to the campus, and will there be discussions within divisions that maybe, you know, standards can be lightened up a little bit? You know, I just think that we've all proven ourselves with whatever we're wearing, and it can be professional in whatever we're wearing. Well, you know, within limits, maybe not your pajamas on campus. But anyway, just the fact that maybe some standards will change as a result of our being away for so long.
Thank you, Renee. That's such a keen observation of just how, you know, COVID has turned everything topsy-turvy and things will change. And when I think about professionalism layered with gender, layered with race, there has been some severe inequities that COVID-19 has uncovered during this time, right? And I'm hoping that this was a learning opportunity, especially for leadership here at DU within our own communities, that things are going to shift a little and they understand that maybe some of these rules are kind of antiquated and they don't do anything except make people's lives more difficult.
Yeah, something else that was shared in our group was when to speak in meetings and how in the nonprofit world, specifically for this person, it really mattered with how much you contributed as to how often or how important your voice was. And I think to a certain extent in my experience being in the for-profit world, that still happens, right? The people that are of more authority, that usually make more money, are the ones that speak first, and are ultimately usually the ones that have their ideas, you know, upheld. even now, I think especially, for women, it's still, women of color specifically, and I'm including myself in that, sometimes things are misconstrued because of our tone or our delivery style, our passion, at least my passion. And so sometimes it comes off as you're trying to be combative with, especially with somebody of higher authority. And I know that I personally have gotten in trouble for it. So lot to unpack and, who speaks in a meeting.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Martha. I think you are picking up on that kind of nebulous or intersection concept of power, privilege, and positionality, right? Like those in power, they can say whatever they want and there are no repercussions, versus those who are, may not have as much institutional power, who also have minoritized identities. I know I have been penalized so many times just for speaking my mind, whether it's, promoting access for other students of color, or, an idea that isn't in the traditional or in the dominant way of doing things. And I think my identity has a huge part of how that impacts other people. So I'm constantly guarded and I don't frankly trust anyone. So I'm always thinking about how I'm speaking, how I'm presenting. So I definitely resonate with that experience. So thank you for sharing. And it looks like Eva, please tell me if I'm saying that incorrectly. They shared that their group talked about our internal struggles with balancing time restraints, deadlines, and productivity expectations with having flexibility for those who don't thrive in a time-structured environment. Yeah, absolutely. I think, Molly's case study really picks up on that, right? Like we all work in different ways. We all will produce at the end of the day, but there are different pathways and avenues in which we can get to that. So I think the more that our workplaces honor and respect and realize like there is not just one way or binary ways of thinking, which is also a marker of white dominant culture, either or thinking, that will only lead to more growth, more creativity, more agency for your employees, retention for your staff. There's just a lot of benefits to pushing up against those notions. Great. Well, I think we're ready to jump into our next group activity. Molly, would you mind sharing your screen again? Awesome. So we were hoping to do this together in this main room. So feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourself, whatever you are comfortable with. But we wanted to, together as a group, come up with kind of markers of professionalism that we find problematic. An example of this is using white accessible dialects or quote unquote proper English. So you can type those answers in the chat, like I said, or you can share them aloud. And then I'll let Molly share the second part of the activity.
Wait, do you want me to share the second part of the activity right now or when we get there?
Oh, sorry. Let's do it when we get there. So there's
okay, great.
We'll do part one. We'll open the floor to all of you. So if anyone wants to share, and we can copy from a few of the things that you shared in your breakout rooms, but what are markers of professionalism? And Molly will type them in the spreadsheet, or not spreadsheet, the PowerPoint. AFB just shared no visible tattoos. Alia said women have to wear makeup, especially in retail, food service, customer service, etc. Look, honestly, I was shocked that I could still do a wing liner today. And I was doing that for me because I just wanted to, but that's absolutely true. Stacy shared dress. It looks like Stacy Colcom. Let me know if I'm saying that incorrectly. Also said no tattoos, body piercings, or colored hair. That's a big one. Being on time. Thank you, Kyle. Oh, Rufina, I really, this one's great. Suit and tie for men, pantsuits for women, or dress with heels. It's not just limited to women, right? These types of toxic professionalism affects all genders. Elise, socializing at company happy hours. Oh, we gotta talk about that. Using no in your emails. No exclamation point. Well-fit clothes, example, women's cut blouses versus men button-down shirts, and it's unprofessional if you're wearing the wrong one. Absolutely, Kyle. Person of authority speaks first, and then speaking depending on the position you hold, with the least senior person perhaps never speaking. Emily, straightened hair. And then Sam, speaking in English when conversing with coworkers. This is great. This is a good list. Saying ma'am or sir using honorifics and salutations. It's a binary. Adding to the Emily's comment about straight hair, no cultural hairstyles. Have to keep your emotions in check. And Stacy picked up on that too. No crying at work, sad face emoji. I don't know about you, but I have cried more at work this year alone and maybe my whole life. And I'm not saying sorry for it anymore. So that's just me. I empower you to do whatever you so choose. No emojis in professional communication. Wow, this is great. This is so many. Maybe we'll do just like one more and then we'll start the second part of this group activity. Yes, we love crying and emojis in this space. You can send me just an emoji as an email, and that's totally acceptable.
Okay. Wow, what a solid, beautiful list. Thank you all so much for your insights. This, yeah, couldn't agree more with all of these. So the second part of this is going to involve some antidotes. So what we mean by antidotes are the things that we can do, or the things that our companies or our environments might be able to do to push back against some of these markers of professionalism. So using our example of using white accessible dialects or proper English, some antidotes to that might be accepting and encouraging diverse ways of communicating, embracing code meshing as an asset, and acknowledgement that standard American English is not superior. So actually, I think it might be useful if there are a lot of themes here. So what I'm gonna recommend is that first, what we do is acknowledge kind of, rather than going through all 16 of these, grouping some of the ideas together. So one thing that I see is regarding how we dress. I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna say body, because there's stuff here about hair, tattoos, body piercings, makeup, and heels, suit and tie. Yeah, so with body, I would love if there's anyone with ideas of how to create an antidote to this. Or one way to think about it is like, what would a workplace with more accepting and encouragement of diverse representations of body and how we present our bodies and professionalism look like?
And feel free to utilize the chat or unmute yourself.
Celebrate the clothing that we have.
This is something that my department is currently kind of looking at, and I and some colleagues are pushing back on, because there's a lot of things in the policy that are vague terms like appropriate, and like if this is appropriate to the outfit, wear pantyhose, or terms like distracting, and yeah, around like tattoos and piercings. So asking that those things be defined, and then in addition to that, asking if there's any historical context for those things, like any complaints around those things being distracting, and what historical context those policies came from, where they came from.
Thank you so much. That's great. Oh my gosh, appropriate. And what was the other word that you said?
Distracting.
Distracting. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow. That that is so loaded. Would anyone else okay, let's see. Members of leadership wearing different clothing based on work of the day, not just saying others can. Okay, great. Oh, okay. So if getting rid of a dress code, it's important to be clear what that means. For example, Goldman Sachs, quote, got rid of their dress code, but instead the vague appropriate metric is in use in the work culture, and it excludes people that don't have the capital to conform to workplace culture. That's a great point. So I'm going to say define and explore what no dress code policy really means in reality. Kyle, do you feel like that accurately captures what you were trying to communicate, or would you amend that?
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. These are great suggestions. I think next I would love to talk about language. So some folks brought up things like speaking English with coworkers, not using specific fonts or emojis or exclamation points. So I'm thinking of language both in the way that we communicate with each other virtually and non-virtually. Don't punish people for usage, including typos and slang. And I'm really sorry, we have now 4 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we leave a couple of minutes for any questions or anything. But I would invite you to share a couple more on language, and maybe if it's helpful for you to take a photo of this, and likely we'll be able to send you an email copy of this too. Recommend that you also brainstorm some of your own antidotes, but maybe we can get a couple more for language.
We actually had for a little while at our office a Spanish language table where we would sit at lunch and converse in Spanish, in the limited Spanish that we had, with a native Spanish speaker, and kind of did some mini lessons or vocabulary. So people saw that. So that was cool.
So what I'm hearing is that learning opportunities for staff to expand languages. Cool. Okay. Thank you all so much for your insights. This is awesome. I wish we could be here all night. I would love to hang out with you all night. Fortunately, I have to go to class after this. Not unfortunately, I made the choice to go to school. I like school, but wish we could stay here and hang out and talk all night. But instead, I will briefly, sorry, I gotta stop sharing real quick so that I can reshare. Okay.
And while Molly is getting our slides back up, we will send that to you after this event. We'll also send some other kind of anecdotes. Really, the purpose for us in that activity was when you are faced with that situation at work, we want you to feel empowered to have the language to push back against that, to advocate for yourself, to advocate for your coworkers when you see it happening to someone else, to be able to point that out, and to be a disruptor, which is what ultimately that's what we're trying to do. And with the 1 minute we have left, we have some further reading and exploration we wanted to share. So I manage a blog for women of color and nonprofits called How Do You Say That? We'd love for you to engage with that content. It's been a really lovely and healing community space. Another learning material is White Supremacy on dismantlingracism.org. And we did share in the chat the Bias of Professionalism article, but we will send that post-event, hopefully. And then just some closing questions for you to consider as you walk away from this, because this work is never done, right? It's a continuum, it's constant. So what are some new ideas that you gained or challenged today? What can you do in your workplace to show up as your whole authentic self? And how do you create space for others to do the same?
And with that, we are concluding our session, our Her DU session on the 4 Eyes of Oppression. And this has been incredibly informative. And we want to thank Molly Smith and Meghan Montelibano. Sorry, I know there's another section to it, but your name isn't all the way through. And there was a blurb. Thank you, Meghan, for letting me get away with that. So there is a blurb on the chat, but I just wanted to let you know that your feedback really helps us bring more impactful programming to the community for next year. And please keep an eye out in your inbox for the post-conference survey. It's a post-conference survey, so you don't get it for each session individually. All who complete a survey will be entered in our drawing to win one of our alumna-sponsored gifts, including the grand prize, $400 towards a stay at the Magnolia Hotel and an airfare package. So you want to be looking for that survey. And we want to thank Meghan and Molly. Thank you so much for sharing with us this very important insight, knowledge, and experience. Thank you.
Thank you all.